Hello, my name is Joshua Caston, and I am with the Cohort 16 at the Guildhall. Today we're going to use the particle editor to create a very simple laser beam effect that can be useful for any sort of energy projectile you might want to use. We're going to do this using only the materials that are already inherent within the UDK engine, or more specifically, the UT3 game materials. Now, this is just the basic window of the particle editor itself, but the first thing we're going to need to do is to add the material itself to the particle. In order to do that, we need to find it in the content browser. We're going to close this and search for it. Now, I have a particular material in mind, and that is under the Vehicles section. So open up Vehicles in the browser, and find the Manta, look for materials, and find this, the M-Manta Energy Fog material. Now, we don't need to open or anything, we just need to have it selected, because what we're going to do is find this button under the Required module. And this is the material, and we can cause it to use the selected object on the content browser. Click the green button, and now we're using the right material. And that is the first step to making this work. Now, the next thing we want to do now that we have the material itself is to give it an appearance that actually makes it look like a bolt of energy. And so we first have to do this by going into the initial velocity module and entering distribution. This sets the direction that the energy is going to. Right now it's set to go up on the z-axis, but we need to go horizontally instead of vertically. So what we're going to do is set this at 0, so that's z on the 0 axis, and make it minus 550 on the y-axis. And we'll do this for both of these. Minus 550, and 0. And now we have it going into a semi-straight direction. It's still flying off infinitely, but at least we're getting somewhere. Now, if we want to stop it from flying off infinitely, we're going to have to change its lifetime. It's currently set to a min-max of 1, and so it's always going to last for about 1 second, and it's always going to reach about that far. But we don't want to go quite that far. And we also want to have a bit of fluctuation, so that doesn't always end right at the same point. Makes the entire lasting effect more wild and variable. So we'll set the minimum to 0.19, and we'll set the max to 0.22. And then we have something that's roughly about the size or length of what we're going for. We also need to change the initial size so that it comes a bit longer and fuller, less thick. So we'll set the max X to 17, the max Y to 175, and the max Z to 0. And we'll set the minimum X to 8, and the minimum Y to 150, and the minimum Z, of course, to 0. And now we have it smaller and going in the right direction, or thinner and longer. So now we need to go back to the Required module and look at PSA square under the screen alignment. And the last thing we need to do is to change this from PSA square to PSA velocity. That will cause the entire material to align itself in the direction that it's going. And now that that's done, we have an energy bolt. Still a bit more we can do with it though. Now the last thing we're going to do is to give this a color that actually looks more like an energy bolt. And so to do that, we're going to go to Color Over Life and find the distribution. And it's currently set to a constant curve. And what that means is that it will change color over the entire course of its life, so that if I set it early on, it will maybe red at the tail, but yellow at the top. And that's good, but I think for this we're just going to keep it to a simple constant color. And so right click on the blue button, on the blue triangular button right here, and find Distribution Vector Constant, and change that to a single variable. Now, your image is going to disappear, but that's fine. It just means that it's invisible, it has no color. Now we're going to set this, the X, to 2.2. Now, in most cases, the X, Y, and Z will stand simply for their place in 3D space on the X, Y, and Z radius. In color, however, this number now stands for RGB. So I've given a red value. Now we'll give the blue value of 0.5 and a green value of 0.35. And now we have a more realistic color for what we're trying to get. And that is basically it. Now, with those simple steps, we've created a rather effective energy beam that will be perfectly suitable in any game. And that's it. There's more things you can do with this, but that's a good place to start with. Thank you for watching.